It's our privilege. And it's actually, I'm so lucky because I get to work with her on a daily, weekly basis. Our next guest is Tiffany Bova, who is the Senior Vice President, Chief Growth Evangelist at Salesforce, author of, and I'm showing off because I'm showing you a proof copy. So this tells me, this tells you Tiffany was sharing this with me before the rest of you guys. So best-selling author of Growth IQ, Get Smarter About Choices That Will Make or Break Your Business. By the way, there's no better time for you to crack this open again and read it. We're going to talk about why. Tiffany has been named to the latest Thinkers 50 list of the world's top management thinkers and is a welcome guest on Bloomberg, BNN, Cheddar, MSNBC, Yahoo Finance, among others. Tiffany also contributes her thinking to publications including Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and many other major media publications. As the host of What's Next, by the way, the guests she gets on this show is ridiculous.
Amazing.
What's Next with Tiffany, Seth Godin, Ariana Huffington, I mean, you name it, Kara Swisher, an iTunes all-time business and management bestseller and top sales podcast, according to Top Sales Magazine. Tiffany has interviewed a growing number of exceptional people. Check it out. What's Next with Tiffany Bova. Tiffany's a top Twitter influencer in business growth, customer experience, digital transformation, and future of work and sales. She was named by Inc. magazine top sales expert you need to follow on Twitter, and a LinkedIn top sales expert to follow in 2018, 2019, 2020, and we're waiting for the 21 list to come out. So we unfortunately have 20 minutes left, so I can't list all the awards she's won. She's a must follow on Twitter at Tiffany, TIFFANI_Bova, BOVA. Welcome back to DisrupTV.
I need to capture that, send it to my mom. She thinks I fix printers. She has no idea. Sort of.
Listen, I had to cut your bio short by a mile. So, you're giving me imposter syndrome, by the way. But thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. No place I'd rather be.
Thank you.
Well, hey, we're coming out of this. We think we're coming out of this. And so, I wonder, how's your book doing? How's it going forward? Are people picking this up saying, we're about to hit amazing growth? I need to come back and read this thing. So how's everything going on your end?
So it was very interesting to listen to Anel, right? Because, over the last 14 months, so much digital transformation has happened so much faster than it was happening sort of pre-pandemic. I was in the early days of the cloud as well. I worked for the US's largest web hosting company from 1999 to 2004. We were selling the World Wide Web, and domain names at the time were I don't know, $7. No, they were actually $75 back then. And, I was a Loqua's beta client. I was Constant Contact's beta client. I was selling this thing called the cloud to try to get companies, even like Workday, right, to not build data centers, but to host it with us. And it was a really difficult then, sort of, from 2000 to 2010. But then in 2010, it started to become a little bit more mainstream. Many small businesses today don't even have websites and don't even have their own domain names. They're still using Gmail or AOL, for those of you who might remember. And so they got caught really flat-footed when the economy just sort of shut down overnight. They didn't have the ability to keep their doors open. So what's been really great over the last 14 months is seeing the resilience of so many businesses stepping up and figuring out what they can do and getting themselves, if you will, back to growth. But it's also been interesting to see some businesses completely spin into totally different directions, knowing maybe where they were focused was not going to sort of take them where they need to grow going forward. So we used to manufacture, cups, and now we're doing PPE equipment, right? We used to do something else, or even these amazing partnerships that have happened between competing pharmaceutical companies, or like Salesforce and CVS, unusual partnerships to solve these really big problems. Once again, to get back to growth, but also to really solve, the things that we need today.
What was brilliant in your book was that, it started by developing a thesis that says the one thing is it's never just one thing. So you purposefully built a growth blueprint based on 10 levers: customer experience, customer base penetration, market acceleration, product expansion, customer and product diversification, sales optimization, churn management, partnerships, co-opetition, and unconventional strategies, which, boy, have you seen quite a bit of those since this decentralized digital-only world due to the pandemic. Okay, and you were brilliant to write this blueprint in Growth IQ before the pandemic. Do any of these 10 growth levers rise more to the top given what we've experienced since March of last year?
Well, the funny thing is that when I wrote the book, one of the very first pages that I wrote said, look, Bain had done some research that said 85% or so, not high 80s percent of companies, the reason they were unable to build consistent and repeatable growth was internal inertia.
Wow.
And then I put a period. Then right after that, I said, unless there's a black swan event. I swear that's what I said.
Wow. It is here. Yeah.
And now I'm like, I immediately call my publisher. Can we erase that line? Like, because I want to keep like, right. Okay. Anyway.
But as a Gartner fellow, it doesn't surprise me that you're providing insights and guardrails so people understand it. As Mark says, you have to have that beginner's mindset. You have to be able to pivot, given the circumstance.
So the answer to that is you're correct. It's never one thing. But when the pandemic first hit, I started to say to customers and clients, and really when I was speaking at events virtually, is that this was the year, this is 2020, was the year of the customer base and not necessarily the net new customer, right? Really digging into, number one, make sure your customers were okay. Is there anything you can do? A lot of the work we did here at Salesforce, we had 1 million conversations that ended up being 1.5 million that have ended up being 6.5 million. But, reaching into the base of customers and asking them what they need from you today and what they need from you tomorrow. Now, you can't, just ask the question like, hey, Mr. or Miss Customer, what do you need from me? Hold on. You can't, otherwise you end up in this sort of Steve Jobs. Steve didn't go out and go, hey, what do you need from me? And they said, I need this. First generation.
Wow.
Whoa.
I'm old.
Listen, she's a techie.
Like
She's a techie. She's a sales expert, world's top expert. But believe you me, I've seen her in action. She can go as deep as you want to go when it comes to technology. So
if you ask the question, what do you want? They're not going to say this.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to say something like, oh, when I'm running, I lose radio signal. Right. Or when I'm running, I don't want to listen to the same CD or tape.
My CD skips when I'm running. No, I was kidding.
Or it skips when I'm running. Right. And so you have to be listening for those signals of what customers are really the jobs that are trying to be done. And so when you think about growth, right, regardless of what path, it's about what job are you solving today? And do you need to be solving it in the future? There's the famous quote of, do people buy 1/4-inch drills or do they buy 1/4-inch holes? I actually think they build hanging a shelf on the wall, which is neither of the other two, right? Because that's the job they really want done. So when you start to uncover that, I think selling into your basic customers, understanding what they need, optimizing the way you actually generate revenue, and then, of course, keeping an eye on both employee and customer experience.
That employee experience piece is huge. And I think you've been talking about this, about how it could double growth. I think there was something you were writing about, talking about Lamborghini and their success focusing on employees. Let's go deep on that if you can. So.
Yeah, it was a hypothesis. And look, I wasn't the first to think of this, right? But it was a hypothesis I had on stage where I would say, look, I don't think it's a coincidence that Salesforce is one of the best places to work globally. And I think in 17 countries, it's number one. And the rest of the world is probably in the top 5. It's one of the most innovative companies in the world. And then it's the fastest growing enterprise software company. I said, there has to be a connection between that. So I went to our CMO at the time, Stephanie Buscemi, and I said, hey, would you be willing to let me sort of test out this hypothesis? And sure enough, she said yes. So we did a research project with Forbes Insight. And lo and behold, we found that companies that were very strong on EX and CX had 1.8x faster growth than those that were not. Now, it wasn't in reverse, right? Just because you had fast growth didn't mean you had a good employee experience or customer experience, right?
Wait. Let's go back to that point.
Yes.
Those, you have to have one before the other is what you're saying here. So
you have to have one before the other, and it doesn't work the other way, right? And Vala and I actually had this conversation that the definition of experience has greatly changed pre-pandemic and today. Maybe it was coffee and foosball tables and wellness floors and all of that. And now it's safety, work from anywhere, remote tools, Workday, all the things in order to keep us connected, or Slack or Salesforce, whatever it might be. And so that experience goes a long way, but it also how you hire, how you train, when you train, is it 19 systems to answer a customer question? Not a great employee experience.
Absolutely. You know, the biggest companies in the world, some of the fastest growing companies in the world, come to you for expert futuristic advice in terms of sales. And it's more and more sales. I see you guiding them on marketing and customer service. So I see the lines of business blending, and some of the leverage that you reference here can be applied to building a healthy healthy commerce, healthy service. It's really about mindset and discipline and optimism and planning. So there's a lot of pressure because they're looking to you to tell them what sales is going to look like 5-10 years from now. So can you give us some advice, or where do you see sales going? What should we expect from chief revenue officers in 2025 as compared to what we expect from them today?
Well, I think the digitization of business is really changing what those revenue officers may be watching, number one. And number two, who may be doing the selling. So I love sort of tossing this one out. What happens when things sell to things? Like, what does the forecast call look like in that situation?
Who's doing the forecasting, actually?
Right. Like, how do you train the thing to sell better to the other thing? And how do you know if it's a good experience? And so that whole connection of human and machine, which of course Ray is really, one of the leaders in thinking about, but thinking about, I always say the new power couple is human and technology, not one or the other, and not one in spite of the other. But there are some times when it's only human and sometimes where it might only be machine. And so I've really been pivoting into that only machine type of revenue generation, where it is an AI, it is a bot, it is some kind of technology that is generating that revenue as an augmentation to what your humans may be doing, not in place of, right? There's been lots of research out there where they've made predictions that sellers would go away. And I don't agree with it. I think the role of sellers will change, and who is doing the selling will change.
We had Scott Galloway here on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he predicted Amazon will be the fastest growing company in the healthcare space. Yes. And his thesis is based on the fact that, with Whole Foods, with insurance, with, Amazon Prime, they have so much data about you. And of course, they are an AI company. So being able to predict health habits and recommend, like you said, running shoes, or again, with wearable technology, your sleeping patterns. I mean, they could become the most trusted advisor in terms of where you should spend your dollars, hard-earned dollars, to stay the most healthy. So I can see things coming into play.
There's two things there. Like the day my bathroom scale talks to my Fitbit, locks my refrigerator, pulls the car up to the gym. I want everybody to know I'm out.
But your healthcare premiums go down. Your healthcare premiums will go down.
Tiffany, that's around the corner. I hate to tell you, it's around the corner. Now, not for you, because your scale is going to always be telling you, hey, I have a triathlete standing on me now. So,
well, but what I'd say about Amazon is, they've been masterful at building the moat, right? And they're also really good at staying close to that core. But one of the chapters in the book is customer and product diversification. Healthcare would be a customer or product diversification for them, but it may be the same customer. Look, I know you buy these vitamins. I know you because they know my shopping habits and my shopping patterns. Almost going back to what you were talking about with Anil, right? Being much more predictive and prescriptive on how you're pushing, or introducing new kinds of services and offers and products to customers where you've already earned permission, which is why the existing base of customers is such an untapped growth engine for so many companies. And they absolutely ignore it because they're so focused on net new logos, they forget the gold they already have.
Customer acquisition cost, right? You can drive them down, get your existing customers to buy more, expand on top of that. I mean, it's a key philosophy behind what's going on. So, but hey, let's talk about where this future is, right? I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, is sales ever going to stay the same? Does sales change in this amount? And does that also change the way leadership is, right? In terms of how we actually bring executives to the table?
So, I have been in and around technology and selling technology for since 1994-ish. So it's been a minute. And this really, regardless of the fact that I work at Salesforce, this is the first time I really feel like technology has shown up to deliver on the promise to the sellers that have been made over the last 2 or 3 decades.
Fine.
I used to use Excel spreadsheets and bubblegum and some Post-it notes, and then I used a single user version of Act and Goldmine, and then I sort of advanced to
Goldmine.
I'm old, right? And then now, to beta beta offers from Salesforce back in 2002. So, I would say that it's been great to watch that this pandemic has sort of forced sellers to use technology that they might have resisted before. It was like, look, I have to sell face-to-face. The only way I can establish is I got to look them in the eye. I got to shake their hand. I need to take them to a golf course and have dinner and do all the things that they do. And now we've really learned that technology can allow us to establish maybe even equal, if not better, relationships with customers. It respects time, all kinds of things, right? So I think that if sellers are open, companies are open, and don't use CRM as just a productivity tool or a forecast tool or a pipeline tool, because it's a very expensive one if you're doing that, and really using it as, what's the next best action? What do customers want from us? What should we be doing? What's working? What's not working? And then get into that beginner's mind, as Vala said, really thinking differently about how you're going to grow. And absolutely, I will tell you, growth is a thinking game. Don't outspend, don't out-hire, don't out-innovate, out-think, because it's a combination of all of those things. And I think that's where the power really is.
Great advice, great advice. All three of us share a common friend who we all admire deeply, Tom Peters. And I have seen numerous conversations with you and Tom. That's right.
Hey,
absolutely. Yeah,
Tom's
and the endorsement from you on the cover. Yes. And I have seen numerous conversations with you and Tom talking about equality, inclusive leadership. You're a sponsor and a mentor. You're a champion of inclusive leadership at Salesforce and all of the stakeholders that Salesforce touch. Your social feed constantly reminds business leaders the importance of inclusion and diversity, importance of equal pay for equal work. Give advice. Share with us the advice you give to CEOs or CXOs when they come to you and say, Tiffany, you're a role model executive. Tell us how we can improve our inclusiveness in our company, improve our ability to promote, individuals and bring more diversity in our culture. What do you tell them? So,
I used to tell them one thing. I sort of had this story I would sort of share. And very early, maybe about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to speak at the UN. So I spoke at the United Nations for Girls and Women 2030.
What an honor. Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
And, it was one of those things, right, where you sort of pull up and it's the guard gate, you walk in, and I walk through the halls and there's the Nelson Mandela statue, and just the whole thing. It's I have goosebumps talking about it. It's one of those things like forever will be one of those top three, right, that I've been able to do in my career. Yep. And a company called IdeaGen, and it was lots of teenage girls in the audience and mothers and a couple of dads, and then speakers talking about what does it look like for girls and women 2030, and how do we get there and align to these SDGs. And I'll tell you, at the end of that session, I walked out going, wow, I had no idea, right? There's so much more we can learn about the lack of opportunity, how we help play a role in offering up that opportunity. People just want chances. And so this whole thing was about a competition for girls competing to make innovative developments. And so they go around the world, they pick these teams, and then 8 teams come to compete. So from the UN, the following week, I flew to back to San Francisco, and it was at Andreessen on campus. You had to pitch. So these little girls, under 13, had to pitch their innovation.
Love it.
So some were from South Africa, some were from Asia, some were from Europe, a couple from the US, and then you would vote on who would win. And then the winner was picked on the Google campus, and the CEO of Google handed them the award. Talk about this, right? These little girls have no idea.
Event,
low profile events.
Low profile, right? And I'm sitting there going this is fantastic, right?
Awesome.
And they were inventing things literally, a little girl said, my grandmother has dementia in Japan, and she walks around, she gets lost, so I'm going to make something so I can find her, right? Not knowing the technology we may have in other parts of the world, right? So really democratizing technology has such impact to people's lives. That was one example. Another was, this girl in Africa saying, 50% of the girls I go to school with never come back. They are walking home and they're never seen again.
They're kidnapped. They never come back. Yeah.
They never come back.
Wow.
Or they're, sexually mutilated, or, was awful. And you're listening to this and you see the power of how they're trying to fix it and they're like 12, 13, 14. And you go, this is what it's all about, right? This is what it's all about. How do you create opportunity to have these young kids solve these big problems that adults seem to not be able to figure out, right? And to change the world. That's what empowers, excites me about sort of inclusion, is that story right there is the one I now tell.
It's not about thinking the change, it's about making the change. And that's really the big shift that's been going on here.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Hey, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here.
Of
Tiffany
course.
Bova, SVP Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce. You can follow her at TIFFANI_BOVA or somewhere on the islands of Hawaii. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, thanks for being here. And yes, indeed.
Congrats. Right. This is must read, everyone. And follow Tiffany on Twitter, Tiffany_Bova. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Cheers. Happy Friday.
I'll have to get on her show.